and thank you for joining today's educational workshop with Cancer Support Community Los Angeles and the Adolescent and Young Adult Program at USC. I'm Kathy Riley, the Associate Director of Programs at CSCLA, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Aura Cooperberg from the AYA program at USC. And we're really honored to welcome you to this week's webinar titled Virtually Connected, Actually Lonely, Navigating Social Media After Cancer. And before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, Cancer Support Community Los Angeles is a premier nonprofit organization that provides vital social and emotional support to families that are facing cancer. And that includes patients and caregivers and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our programs include support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs like this one. And if you want to learn more about our services or watch past webinars, you can visit our website. And that website is cancersupportla.org. And then I would like to invite Aura Cooperberg to turn your camera on and tell us a little bit about the AYA program at USC.
Great. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Kathy. It's such a pleasure to partner on programs like these with you. So, hello, I'm Aura Cooperberg, Project Administrator of AYA at USC. My role is to develop supportive care programs for AYA at USC, something I've done as a lifetime career. First at Children's Hospital for Adolescents with Cancer, and now at a USC Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center with young adults. So let me tell you a little bit about AYA at USC. In 1913, AYA at USC was established at USC Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center to meet the unique developmental, social, and emotional challenges of young people with cancer ages 18 to 39. Our interdisciplinary team provides the vital age-related clinical services such as counseling, support groups, insurance and financial concerns, and fertility preservation for AYAs at Norris. In addition to our clinical services, and this is what kind of makes us a little different, we offer supportive care programs that welcome young adults and their caregivers from any treatment center. Our goal is to provide opportunities to educate through workshops like this one, B, find avenues to express oneself through art, journaling, and others, C, encourage health promotion topics such as oral health, pain management, and D, to counter isolation through connection, such as social activities. We have our signature programs, such as our 3-day retreat, which is coming up in September, and many other things through the course of the year. So please, if this is just a brief description, if you'd like to learn more about us, you could visit us on our website, aya.usc.edu. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And before I introduce today's speaker, note that your video and microphone are disabled for this webinar, but you can enter questions for the speaker and the panelists into that Q&A feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation by our speaker and young adult panelists. And we may not be able to get to all of the questions today, but we'll get to as many as possible. The chat feature is also open. Please use the chat to share comments and resources with other participants or to ask questions of CSCLA or USC's AYA program. And so limit those chat comments to information that's relevant to this topic. So with that, I will introduce our presenter for today. Dr. Kimberly Miller is an associate professor at the Keck School of Medicine of the University of Southern California. Her research focuses on health behaviors, health management, and quality of life among diverse young adult cancer survivors, with particular emphasis on addressing health disparities in underserved populations. as principal investigator on two National Cancer Institute-funded studies. Dr. Miller employs behavioral, epidemiological, and implementation science approaches to inform clinical practice and health policy. Dr. Miller is also a founding co-director of the Center for Young Adult Cancer Survivorship Research, where she leads collaborative, multidisciplinary initiatives aimed at improving health outcomes and access to care for young adult cancer survivors nationwide. It gives me really great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kimberly Miller.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Would you like me to start sharing slides and take it away?
That would be great.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you all. Just want to thank Cancer Support Community Los Angeles and also my colleagues at AYA at USC for inviting me today. It's great to be presenting again for Cancer Support Community LA. So thank you all, Kathy, Ora, Shu, Abby. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I'm going to share my slides now. Okay. And great. Can someone just give me a thumbs up if that looks good?
It looks great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me start. So thank you all. The title of my talk is Virtually Connected, Actually Lonely. And I'm going to reintroduce myself. And thank you, Kathy, for the introduction. That's my official bio, but I wanted to, just give you all a little bit more context as to what my research concerns and how it integrates with our talk today. My research focus is on young adult cancer, and specifically what I and my research team are interested in is how can we improve outcomes for young people after a cancer diagnosis? And that can range from, medical outcomes to, emotional well-being, the facets of quality of life. It can also include things like, financial well-being and those sort of, alleviating the material hardships that people can have after cancer diagnosis and treatment. But what I'm going to focus on today is my research and the research, not just mine, but the research into social relationships and social connection. And that's what today's talk is going to be about. And I'm going to issue a disclaimer at the beginning, which is I am not an expert in social media. And I'm saying that not just because it's like a typical disclaimer, like, oh, this is not, the health advice of a professional. It's not just that. It's that I really don't want to claim to have any expertise. And I want to just say, like everybody on this call, I am a social media user. And we're all in this together, the social media research that I'm going to share and some of the benefits and some of the concerns. And I want to issue, I'll call it a challenge, or maybe it's more of an opportunity for all of us, okay, to think about and to be mindful about our social media use. So I don't want to claim expertise because in this way, I'm one of all of us. And so, when I get to that, we'll talk a little bit more, but it implicates all of us. So I'm going to talk about social relationships, which I do have more knowledge about, and also how that intersects with our social media use. But I want to start by being specific and concrete about some of the terms that we use when we are researching social relationships. So before I started this line of research into social health, I would use terms like social isolation, social connection, loneliness interchangeably. And what I didn't realize was that they have specific very specific definitions. And so there's both objective and subjective aspects to our social connections in the world. So loneliness is actually the feeling of feeling alone, feeling isolated, and it's regardless of anyone's objective, social relationships, meaning it's a subjective sense. And that means that when we measure loneliness in research, the only way we can find out if somebody feels lonely is to ask them if they feel lonely. Um, it's not, one can be very isolated, have very infrequent social contact, but not feel lonely. But by contrast, one can be surrounded by people, have a lot of social interaction, but still feel lonely. So I'll give an example of something which I think really like exacerbated, but also brought this into relief. During COVID, many of us were issued stay-at-home orders. So if you were in California, we had stay-at-home orders, and it increased our feeling, it increased our objective isolation. The social networks that we had were interrupted for some amount of time. Some of us lived with, other people, our families, significant others, what have you, roommates, but others of us did not. Some of us felt lonely as a result of this, and some people didn't. Some people actually, did not perceive that experience as being, enhancing loneliness because for whatever reason, some people just don't feel as lonely being isolated. And it's important to say loneliness there's nothing wrong with it. It's a completely universal experience. I think we've all felt lonely. It's just that it really is different in terms of its severity and its impact. And one thing I will say is one of the reasons, and I didn't say this in the beginning, but one of the issues with young cancer, early onset cancer, and we're talking for some that's definition before age 40 or before age 50, is that there are very distinct social issues that occur in this age group because of life stage, right? And what we find in research is that a lack of social connection and increased loneliness seems to be more common at younger ages than older adults who have cancer experience. Now, that's not to minimize a cancer experience for anybody. It's always challenging, and no matter what age. But for young adults, for young people, having cancer occurs at a time that's very formative in terms of identity, social connection, and it can really increase young people's feeling of loneliness after a cancer diagnosis. Cancer is quite uncommon. It's quite rare in young people. So a young person who has cancer may not know anybody else who's ever had this experience. A young person with cancer may not know how to disclose this information about their health to their peers. Again, because it's so rare and it's difficult. And it also often interrupts life. It puts a pause on the formation of career or, relationships with friends, with significant others. When schooling can be interrupted. It's a very difficult experience because of life stage. So it can serve to increase feelings of isolation, loneliness in young people. That is why, one of the reasons why I think it's so important because we really see this trend. And again, loneliness is, it's a universal human experience, but it's not great in terms of one's health. And here's the thing, pervasive chronic loneliness has been linked to serious health risks. Why do we care about this? Of course, like I said, it's universal. Everybody experiences loneliness, but chronic loneliness that continues over time, really can impair one's health. And if you're interested in this topic, I recommend, and I put the link in these slides, I really recommend the 2023 Surgeon General's report on loneliness and isolation in the United States. It's really good. It really goes into depth about the research in this area, the impact on health, and a lot of data and statistics about levels of loneliness and isolation in the US, which is really staggering. And it does talk about, young people, not just young people with cancer, but this epidemic of loneliness occurring among younger people. So we have really solid scientific evidence over like 40 or 50 years that there are serious health issues associated with the lack of social connection. And probably most prominently there would be what we call all-cause mortality. In other words, risk of dying. So social connection, the lack of social connection is an important predictor of death. Also heart disease and stroke. Loneliness has also been strongly associated with impaired cognitive function, mild cognitive dysfunction, and Alzheimer's dementia. With depression and other mental health issues, and with diminished immunity, infection, overall stress reaction, higher cortisol in the body, with sleep issues. So overall, addressing loneliness, chronic pervasive loneliness, is important in terms of improving health outcomes. We know this. And so, after cancer, we really want to be able to understand during cancer treatment and, post-therapy, we really want to try to understand, address, measure levels, and do a better job with cancer survivors at addressing loneliness to improve health outcomes. So immediately, or, one would think, well, we have the answer, right? The answer is social media. Um, because there's an unprecedented opportunity for social connection. And all of us, most of us, I'm going to speak for most of us, are integrated in it in a daily basis. So, when we look at the statistics, how did social media arise? Well, I'm going to guess that many of us here attending don't even remember a time when there wasn't some form of like digital culture, whereas others of us do, right? So, I mean, early social media, there was, early ideas of connectivity, in the 1980s, the 1990s, to try to connect people digitally. And some of us may be old enough to remember things like AOL chat rooms, these very like primitive forms of connection. But really, social media started to explode in the early 2000s. And that was when we saw, the origin of MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube. And that was kind of the first wave of social media. And that also occurred with the invention and, wide availability of smartphones. And then there was kind of a second wave of sites like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. And now TikTok is the number one social media site globally. But putting together this talk, I looked at the statistics and it's really staggering. I mean, 5.4 billion users worldwide, which represents 65% of humanity, is accessing social media on their smartphone. 99% are connecting via smartphones. So, the average person has seven social media accounts. It's a lot, right? And is spending at least 2.5 hours a day. And for younger people, it's often much more. So this is, when I say all of us, that's where I'm drawing that information from. It's a good guess that all of us have at least one social media account here. And so again, I'm a fan of social media and social connection. I mean, here I am, talking to a cancer support community, and AYA at USC, which uses a lot of, like many of you maybe got here from social media, right? We're on Instagram. I saw the thing on Instagram. So it's a really important opportunity for us to connect. And if you've had cancer, if you're a cancer survivor, and especially if you're young, there's so much promise and actually important benefits here to social media. Number one, you can have access to supportive communities anytime and anywhere. And like I said, cancer in young people is rare. It's uncommon. And to be able to find other people and connect online and virtually people who may share your experiences is incredibly important. That can really reduce feelings of isolation, and encourage feelings of optimism and self-empowerment to connect with other people. Also, social media has a very important role of providing information. It's not just about sharing emotional support and experience, but it's also how one can access information. And so, on some of the patient advocate sites, and what I've seen is sharing information about treatments, about clinical trials, that's really important. It's often a opportunity for people to, you know, um, help others, through sharing information about the trials that they're on. And we know it can be really hard to access that information sometimes. And also symptom relief. I do a lot of work with colorectal cancer and in young people, and it's a really high symptom burden uh, disease. And people, through their treatment have all sorts of issues with skin rashes and fatigue, and if you have an ostomy, like dealing with your ostomy, and there's so much beneficial positive information online that really other patients and survivors know. It's kind of like a like a well-known thing that, like, when people get cancer, they often become, they are the authorities on their illness and their body, and they can share that and do so quite generously with others. So we see this a lot. So, I'm not critical of social media. I think there's a lot of, a lot of benefits, a lot of reasons to use it. But in research, what we find is this issue of the social media paradox. And that is that, while it's again an unprecedented time to be connected, we can be connected with hundreds or thousands of people. Um, that actually what we find is greater social media consumption can lead to greater feelings of loneliness and social isolation. And so it's a double-edged sword. Um, why this happens is that, virtual connection isn't always the kind of meaningful, authentic relationships that actually foster feelings of social connection, right? And I think um, we all have sensed this. We've all experienced this before. So social media can increase self-comparison. That's a big issue. It's so idealized and curated. And again, I think we all have experienced this, and not just experienced it, but maybe perpetrated it, right? Maybe we have engaged in it because we have both passive we are um, consuming content, but we also, many of us, generate content. If I'm posting a photo on Instagram, I'm presenting a portrait of what my life looks like, an insight into my life, okay? And most of the time, a lot of the time, I'm not posting the hard stuff, I'm posting the good stuff. And so when you're scrolling and you're looking at social media, oftentimes it is it's curated content, and it can increase one's sense of social comparison and maybe reduce self-esteem. Now, if you've had a cancer experience, you're going through a cancer experience, it can be a very vulnerable time. And there's a large spectrum of issues that can happen. And so, one can imagine that you may be struggling with, body image for whatever reason, and you're kind of scrolling through social media, and all you're seeing is idealized versions of bodies. I mean, and, again, I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm not even going to get into like what filters and all of that, can do. I mean, to anyone, to non-cancer affected individuals, this is harmful. But again, if you've had cancer and you're young, it can be a really vulnerable time. So it can really decrease self-esteem, and then make people feel more isolated, make you feel more isolated. Online interactions really, I mean, what we're talking about is the lack of depth and authenticity. And so research has shown that as one not just consumes this, but as I said, as one is generating content, and I'm not talking about in a professional content creator way, just posting things, and it can lead you further and further away from yourself, right? You can engage in this, again, this kind of this curation of the self, which can then rebound for you and just lead to loneliness. So that's what the research shows. um, Double-edged sword. There's many beneficial things, but again, there's this issue of of increasing loneliness. The other thing I should say is that there's also a ton of misinformation on social media, and that's really difficult. And I think it's especially difficult, again, when you've had a cancer experience and you may be looking for information and you're getting a bunch of misinformation. And I can give like one example would be dietary information. There's just so much misinformation regarding diet on social media. And it's hard. It's hard for me. I mean, I'm a scientist and I look at these things and I'm like, really? Is that, I'm suspicious. But I'm not an expert in this. But then I imagine someone who's maybe struggling with issues regarding their diet, struggling with nutrition, trying to find something healthy, trying to find something they can tolerate to eat, and then dealing with all this misinformation. How can you tell? How can you tell what's authentic, what's not? So there's, again, a lot of challenges. I talked about this. The other thing I didn't talk about is privacy concerns. Obviously, there's large issues with privacy online. There's, at a global level, we have, cyber crimes. There's also, cyberbullying. There's bullying online. With privacy concerns, it's like, how much should you be sharing your health information online? That's always a huge issue. And so, you know, one wants to be cautious about giving too much information, but in this, that can lead again to a sense of inauthenticity or feeling that, one wants to be authentic and wants to be themselves, but one has to balance that against, sharing too much health information. So these are all considerations and issues of navigating social media and especially navigating it after cancer. I think it raises new concerns and challenges when one has had cancer and one is on social media. And so what can we do? And this is the part where, again, I'm not a psychologist, and I haven't had cancer. I study cancer in young people, and I am a researcher, but I'm also a social media user. So that's why I was saying in this disclaimer, I'm not exempting myself from these things. It may not affect me in the same way, but it affects all of us, enmeshed in social media. And so these are some practical strategies. And like, I don't have the answer, but I can tell you what research suggests that we all do. And, the number one thing is to set boundaries. And you know yourself. You know what you might know what your triggers are, what your emotional triggers are. And you can curate your social media. You can mute, you can block, you can decide not to interact, you can set, that's curating your feed, right? You can do that to an extent. You can know when to stop, and you can also try to set some limits on how much you are consuming. And like I said, I need to follow my own advice here. Um, you can also opt for those communities that make you feel good. Cancer-specific support communities, there's, again, like I said, these are incredible opportunities for getting emotional support, getting information. And so joining those specific communities and getting integrated there may be super helpful rather than just, kind of scrolling everything on social media, being intentional about what you're seeking out. The other thing is that doesn't also mean that those aren't real world connections, because in the groups that I've seen, people meet up in real life. There's different conferences, there's sometimes retreats, there's a hybrid approach. And I think that's the same here with, I know AYA at USC is like that, right? It's a hybrid kind of thing. There's online things, there's offline real world connections. It's something to prioritize as well. We're both, online people, but we can also be offline and, making sure that we are, mindfully prioritizing those real world connections, which they are often meaningful and, authenticity characterizes them. And the other thing is, you know, seeking offline help is often important. If you're feeling chronically lonely, if you're feeling, constantly um, like you have a lack of social connections, then again, this is normal, right? It's normal to feel lonely. We've all felt that before. And after a cancer experience, I think it's normal to have heightened chronic feelings of loneliness. And there are people who can help, right? So, maybe going online is not the answer, but trying to find social workers or, psychologists, seeking therapy, I think that can help. Talking to somebody about it, counseling. And so that's why I wanted to issue all of us today a challenge, which is, we're navigating social media, but we want to balance that with face-to-face interactions. And again, I need to take my own advice because I'm not always good about this. Um, but our challenge is, as much as we're on social media, to try to reach out to our friends, our families, our peers, fellow survivors, for in-person interactions to balance what we're doing. Um, and again, to remember that, loneliness is normal, right? We all experience loneliness, but to understand for us, when does it tip the balance, right? When does it tip the balance into something that we need help with? Um, Being attuned and mindful to that, thinking, is this normal for me to be feeling this day after day? I think all of us need to try to become attuned to it. And sometimes I think chronic loneliness after a certain amount of time, if that feels normal to you, that may be a sign for you to say, no, I need to address it. I'm not an expert in that. I'm not an expert in addressing loneliness. But what I can say is going to counseling again, and then trying to reach out to people, as difficult as that is in real life, can often really help. And so with that, I want to say thank you to everyone and to open this up to questions and answers and discussion.
I was just wondering, there were questions, Kimberly, specifically for you. So I'm wondering if we should, uh, you know, kind of address those questions before we go on to the panel. What's your thinking? There's only a few.
Sure.
So
Are they in the chat?
yeah, they're in the chat. It says, if you're isolated, is there a benefit to social media? Meaning, should I be social media in order, meaning, should I be on social media in order to interact if I am isolated? So I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to add to your to your presentation regarding that question from.
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's important to check in to understand if your isolation is caused by your social media use. Ask yourself the question. I think it's important for all of us to ask the question after we're engaging in social media, is this making me feel better or not? I mean, I think we know the answer to that oftentimes. And I think it's important to get in tune with yourself to understand, why am I feeling isolated, and is my social media use um, exacerbating that? Because again, I'm a big fan of social media. I think there's a lot of positive things that we all gain, and that, cancer survivors specifically can gain from social media. But I think it's important for us to ask ourselves the question, check in and say, how is this impacting me? Is it positive? Often I think we know the answer to that. We just need to ask ourselves.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you so much for being here today. What a meaningful presentation. It's something we really haven't addressed and so important. So now we welcome questions. I think we welcome questions from all of you, and those were the questions, I think, Kim, that I just read. And then once again, feel free to type your questions into the question and answer feature found on the bottom of the Zoom window. And I'd like to invite our young adult panelists to join us. So thank you again, and we'll get to the next part. And I'll introduce everybody. I want to thank everyone and welcome our panelists, Robert Kim, Kenny Chu, Reagan Rush, and Mikaya Nanagalama. Did I do okay?
Oh, Mukai Nangalama.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Great, thank you very much. Okay. So first, I'd like to introduce Robert. Robert, this is something that you are a bladder cancer survivor, Robert Kim, and he says he knows firsthand the importance of connection and support during the cancer journey. He found that social media made communicating with his peers far easier, providing a space to share experiences, seek advice, and offer encouragement in real time. Through online forums and survivor groups, Robert not only discovered vital information, but also built lasting bonds within a supportive community. By bridging distances and breaking down barriers to conversation, social media became an invaluable tool in his recovery, transforming isolation into shared understanding and collective strength. Today, Robert is committed to highlighting how digital platforms continue to foster meaningful connections among those facing similar challenges. So thank you, Robert, for joining us. Our next member, Kenny Chu. Hi, Kenny. Has almost 20 years of relevant work experience in the tax field, starting his career as a major, quote, Big Four, unquote, public accounting firm, and is currently the head of tax at a real estate asset management firm. He graduated from the University of California and received master's in business taxation from the University of Southern California. Kenny has been an active member in the AYA at USC community, serving as the AYA council member, as well as joining Team AYA at USC in the Los Angeles Marathon each March. So welcome, Kenny. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Aura.
Yes. Reagan, hello, welcome. Reagan lives in Las Vegas and is a two-time survivor of stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma, first diagnosed at 23 and again at 25. In 2021, she underwent a bone marrow transplant at USC Norris. While many of her friends were building careers, traveling, and navigating relationships, Reagan spent much of her early 20s in the hospital, which is an isolating experience in itself. It taught her the importance of creating her own, quote, village for support. Today, she uses her story to speak honest conversations about loneliness and connection in young adults facing cancer. Reagan will graduate in May from Nevada State University with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Resource Science. She is currently doing research with black carbon and wildfires. And I heard, Reagan, you had mentioned that before we got online, that you also want to get your doctorate too. So you'll
be doing that probably like August or September of 26.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's terrific. And then Makaya. Okay, Makaya is a breast cancer survivor who transformed her stage 3 diagnosis into a mission of empowerment and advocacy. Diagnosed at 35 with hormone-positive disease, she endured chemotherapy, multiple surgeries, radiation, and reconstruction, all while navigating a demanding career as an attorney and educator. Her journey has underscored the power of resilience, community, and self-advocacy, and she's committed to using her voice to inspire hope, encourage proactive healthcare, and help others thrive beyond diagnosis. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to share a couple of questions. And please, anybody who has questions from the audience also, you can write it in the chat. So first of all, I want to say that Dr. Miller, she spoke about social media's impact, often experienced as a double-edged sword. I mean, that was very clear that it has both a benefit and it can also have harm. So I just wanted to know, in one word, how would you describe your relationship with social media since your diagnosis? I'm going to ask the panel that in one word. What has been your relationship with social media since your diagnosis?
I would say whiplash.
I love that word. That's great. I'm going to write that down. That's a great word, whiplash. Yeah.
For me, I would say it's been multifaceted.
Okay. So that's good too, because we can go further into that and discuss it. Okay.
Or for me, I'll use the word complicated. You
Yeah,
know.
we should have used that instead of whiplash.
That's great.
And I would say simply just a tool.
Cool.
A tool.
Oh, a tool. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So that's very different. Everybody had very different kind of response. So I'd like to get a little bit more into that. First of all, before I do that, how did you first start using social media after your diagnosis? Was it a conscious decision or did it happen naturally?
I was already on social media since like high school or middle school. So I think and everything's always been private. I mean, I'm the youngest of 6 sisters, and so they kind of, and they're obviously older than me, so they kind of showed me that the internet's not too safe. So everything was already private. And so when I first started, it was really hard finding spaces that were not romanticizing cancer experience, like The Fault in Our Stars and things like that, and like Hollywood romanticizing, you know. And it was really hard finding spaces that were safe for young adults. So I think like my first time, I guess, using social media as like my cancer space was kind of announcing to like people who weren't my close circle, like my family and my close friends, announcing to people like, hey, I'm 23 years old and I've got stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I'm opening the floodgates to questions and I started advocating, because I'm like, everyone would ask me like, what were your symptoms? Like, how did you find that out? You know, like who believed you, first of all? Because at the time, I was really overweight, and I'm also a woman, and no one believed me. And so a lot of people were just like, how did that happen? And so I think that was kind of my first instance of social media after cancer, was just kind of opening the gates to everything.
Because you described it as whiplash. Was that kind of what it felt like?
Yeah, because it was, I don't know what it was, but I kind of felt like people either didn't believe you. There was a girl in my high school that faked cancer, and I felt like a lot of people wouldn't believe me because I was so young. And especially because my cancer diagnosis, a lot of my doctors even said like they didn't think that wasn't the first thing on their mind, because older people usually have it, or really, really young kids have it. So, which I don't even know if that's true, but it was just hard to see, like, kind of tell like if people believe me or not. And then like the questions that people would ask me. And I think the second time around, because people would ask me if I had to do radiation, all those things, and all I had to do was chemo for I think like 9 months, like every other week. And I think people have this vision of cancer where it's every single day you're going headfirst into chemotherapy and radiation and all these things. They think it's like, it is really dramatic, but in my experience at the first time around, it was every other week, 8 hours a day, like on a Friday. And I guess I just think people thought that it wasn't as dramatic as everyone sees it on like in Hollywood. And so there was kind of like this disbelief. But then when I got my stem cell transplant, when I got diagnosed again, that's when everyone was like, oh, okay. Wow, she's bald. Because the first time I wasn't bald. I didn't lose any hair. I mean, I lost a little bit, but not enough for people to notice. And so I think that's also another thing why people didn't really where people kind of like, you don't look sick, you don't look normal.
Mm.
Like you look normal, you don't look sick. And so that was kind of like the whiplash of like, ugh, like people believe me but don't believe me. And it's like, and then having to deal with the things from this girl from high school that faked it. And so that was like where the whiplash was like, do I have to prove myself? Like I have to prove that I have cancer to these people that I don't even know. And so that's where the whiplash comes from.
Wow. Wow, how difficult not to be believed. I know there was an article recently about a young person who ended up being diagnosed with cancer, and she had already been an influencer and not being believed. I mean, people did not believe her, and she went through horror
Yeah.
with her people. So it's got to be so difficult.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What was it, a conscious decision, or did it happen naturally for anybody just to kind of start using social media after your diagnosis?
I'll chime in. For me, I think it kind of just happened naturally. I was already very active on social media. And right after I received my diagnosis and was working through the shock of that, like one of the first places I went to was social media and like TikTok to just see like what does this look like? What does stage 3 breast cancer look like? I have never met anybody personally, like prior to my diagnosis, I was a young person with breast cancer. So I was looking to see who was out there because in my mind, I I just visualized, okay, I'm gonna look like the people on TV who are like bald and sick and throwing up all the time, and I'm gonna be so weak and all of that. And so social media really like illustrated what it actually looks like for me. And um, I found it in a way to also kind of give me hope that I would be okay because I connected with people online who were sharing their experiences, and I've even made friends with people who had, breast cancer as well, who were further in treatment than I was, and so they were giving me all of their kind of like tips and tricks to get through treatment, and so. By like researching, I kind of found a community there and also, honestly, I would look for stories of just people who have been like long past their diagnosis, long past active treatment, just to find some hope that I could be on the other side of this and people are living great lives and they're healthy and, can go on to be active and whatever else they wanted to do. So even now sometimes I just look for stories from long-term survivors just to give me a sense of hope, like all is not lost and I can keep going and I could be here 40, 50 years from now, I hope, and still have a good and fulfilling life. On the other hand, it also turned into a tool of informing my close community about just like my treatment and where I was in treatment. And it kind of, I wasn't necessarily going to share at first. I didn't really want to share because part of me didn't want to be known as like the cancer girl. Like, I don't want my identity to be the cancer, and I don't want everybody to just look at me like, oh, she has cancer. Like, I still want to be me, and that's just something that happened to me. And so, um, I actually had the opportunity through a breast cancer organization to have like a session with a celebrity hairstylist, and they were doing wigs for people who were actively in chemo. And so I got a chance to participate in that, but I didn't know that they were recording it for social media. And until I got there, and they were recording it, and I was like, okay. And I thought maybe they would be releasing it sometime much further down the line, but they were like, oh, we want to release it in a few weeks. And at that point, I'm like, oh gosh, there's a lot of people that don't know about this. And the stylist is a big stylist who I have quite a few friends that follow this person who didn't know what was going on with me. So they were kind of respectful and they were like, okay, we'll release it on your timeline, but don't wait too long because we want to post this. So it kind of forced me to, tell my people what was going on with me to kind of prepare themselves because I didn't think it would be fair for them to find out from social media. But then when they did post, and they crafted the story in such a beautiful way of just like getting my cancer diagnosis and, trying on wigs and things. And it kind of opened this floodgate for me, to kind of advocate and use that video to talk about not only my diagnosis, but just bring awareness to, people are young getting breast cancer. It's not what you look like. It's not necessarily like your grandma. There are many of us out here in our 20s and 30s, and you should be vigilant. And I had, for me, my doctor said I had a very, my medical record basically was boring. My medical record was very boring and there was nothing there. And then all of a sudden there was this cancer. And so, and it was missed. And so I have been using it to let people know, you can look perfectly fine and healthy, and health professionals can, miss your diagnosis. So it's very important to just be aware, to be asking questions, screening yourself, and yeah, so it's been it naturally developed into a tool for me.
That's great. That's wonderful because it wasn't something you wanted. At first, it was a privacy issue, and then it kind of was handled very delicately. That
Right.
it really helped. So that's why you probably said multifaceted. Did you say multifaceted?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
I always
Thank you.
I always say that my favorite thing to see in a scan is unremarkable.
Yes.
Stop.
Amen.
And that was the word they used for me. They were like, your medical history is quite unremarkable.
and then going outside, like not have, like when they don't see the evidence of disease, like when I finally went into remission like a year ago, he was like, the radiologist was all like, PET scan compared to this PET scan is unremarkable. And I was like, yes. I've never wanted to be unremarkable so bad.
Yes.
Thank you.
So great to be boring. Kim says
Yes.
thank you.
So great to be boring. You're right.
Right. And I just want to make sure we get everybody in. So Kenny or Robert, I know if you want to add, did you, let's see, let me see if I got to another question here. Maybe something.
Yeah,
about-
what was the question again?
Well,
It
the
was
question here was it a conscious decision or did it happen naturally to start using social media after your diagnosis? I have other questions too, but
okay, I could take that one.
okay, you got that one? Okay,
yeah,
good.
so
Kenny.
for me, it definitely was naturally. I think in the beginning of cancer and all of it, it's just literally just a numb feeling of not knowing what's going on and what you're feeling and what possibly is reality. And I think once this dust settled, it was an effort to try and really just express myself. I think I used the word, what was it, complicated? And I think
Yes.
social media is just so incredibly wonderful to be able to express myself and really just tell out to the world, this is who I am and how I'm feeling. And I remember now I'm digging through my Facebook wall here, but it was something along the lines of like, my name is Kenny and I'm a effing beast of some sort. And I'm seeing this now. I was like, oh, that's a bit ridiculous, but that was the feelings that I was feeling then. And I was just trying to express myself. So it was definitely natural and it was definitely complicated because I think it's a double-edged sword and you do a post and then immediately you check to see what the comments are, or you go and check to see how many likes there are, and that type of feeling is just so I guess not great. And so that was my experience, but I truly believe in being relentless and gritty, and so I think stick with social media if it works, and just know that in the end of the day, the way I got through something like loneliness and just horrible, horrible loneliness and depression was having a real life experience and real life memories with family and friends. And a lot of times you can't get that from social media. You just really have to go out there in this real world and experience life and talk to people and do meetups and go out to bars and just go dancing at a club. honestly. So
Right,
that's
right.
my 2 cents there.
Oh, thanks, Kenny. And how about Robert? You use it as a tool, you say, and I see that from your introduction that you wrote, that you really have used it as a tool in many ways.
Yeah, a lot of things came naturally, just seeking information was one thing. And then I think the biggest thing that was kind of unnatural it was, it just, I didn't want to sound like a me, or like, as someone like that. But then, it got to a point where it's like, um, I don't want to answer the same questions over and over again. So, if I put it out on social media, like they kind of already see where I'm at. And also, like, the one thing I thought was like, I'm kind of dying at the moment. And, if you don't find out now, worst case scenario, you'll find out at my funeral. So I was just like, just put it out there. And that really helped me to push, like, what's been going on with me out there. And, that like really like gave me some breathing room as to like, telling people how I am and how I'm feeling or like what I'm going through. And so like, in a lot of sense, it made a lot of things easier for me. And, as far as like misinformation goes, like you just got to take it like one step at a time, while using social media. Like, it's just like, if one thing doesn't, if chemo doesn't work, or if like some other thing doesn't work, well, like I have all these other options at hand that I could try. So like, I just had these extra information on the go, on the ready, and just took it step by step, and used it as needed, or on my body, my trial basis.
Great. Thanks, Robert. I know it's a little after 1. I don't want to take advantage of this, but I know there were a list of questions which came in from the registrants, people that registered, and they seemed to be all how-to questions. But I think we could have another hour on this how-to questions, and like how to overcome loneliness, which I think we addressed, and not feel isolated, how to strike the line between authentic and sad sack. I think we maybe discussed that. We even touched on that. Do you find that's true? Not to,
What was it?
it says how to strike the line between authentic and sad sack.
Honestly, it's cancer. You can't really avoid being a sad sack. Or like, I think you can be authentic and still be sad that this terrible thing is happening to you and your family and your friends, and like mostly to you, obviously, but like your family and friends are also still being affected by it, even though it's your firsthand experience. So with me, when I first started posting and having those conversations about being diagnosed and going through like going through like the chemo and everything, I was fully indulging the fact that I was a sad sack. Like not just being like, oh, poor me, but I was very much being like very raw. Like, I feel really angry today. I feel defeated. I feel sad. I want to punch something, but I don't have the energy to. Like, I like there's so many feelings, and you don't have to always be thankful that this experience is happening to you. And you don't have to be like, you can be frustrated with your family. Like, I had a family member tell me to take coffee enemas. And I told my mom, and my mom like wrote her a very worded Facebook message. Like, you are allowed to feel what you're feeling with this terrible thing that's happening to you, because I think that is authentic. Like, it doesn't need to be romanticized like Hollywood portrays it to be, or like other people are portraying on social media. I think social media, it's this everyone knows that like influencers, for example, typically aren't the realest, and like when we do see a real influencer, it's like, oh, breath of fresh air. But I think for me at least, when I first started talking about my cancer experience, I really wanted to be like, I can't find anyone who's being relatable about cancer on social media, especially Instagram. You know, like they always want to sell something, or, you know, or they're trying to talk about juice cleanses or coffee enemas or a holistic approach to chemo. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be like, that's frustrating. And I'm frustrated about this. And I'm going to talk about my cancer on this public platform that it does suck. And I'm really frustrated and I'm angry. And why me? But also, your only option is to survive. Like your only option is to fight, you know? Like you have to fight for yourself because you are, my sister always told me, she said, you are your only advocate, or not your only advocate, but you are your best advocate. You know what you need, you know what you feel. And like you have your village, but also like your doctor is going to listen to you. Like before I got diagnosed, I demanded an x-ray because my rib popped out of place because I was coughing too hard, and then they found a tumor. You know, like I had to really advocate for myself, and that is frustrating and really, like, you know. And I guess I'm going like, I'm on a tangent, but I always talk about this. I always have these conversations that being a sad sack is authentic. Like it's not all happiness. It's not all thankfulness, because why are you thankful for having cancer? I mean, now I think of, if I didn't go through this, I wouldn't be where I am at today. But I could have had any other challenges in this world to get where I am today. I didn't need to get diagnosed cancer twice, you know, and like fear for my life twice. So be a sad sack, do it, because that's what people need to see. They need to see the reality of cancer. And
yes.
I think that's what we need to see more of on social media, is the reality of cancer and cancer treatment and the cancer experience, and how your relationships change and your circle changes, your villages change. You'll see who's there for you, who's not there for you, who reacts different, who, you know, like you see a lot. And like, I think you also learn a lot about grief. So just be a sad sack, be authentic, feel what you feel, and don't let anyone tell you to shut it down.
I just want to piggyback off of what Reagan said. I completely agree with everything that she just said. I also, the word like authentic is kind of triggering for
Yeah.
me, because sometimes people, I feel like, want to tell you how you should be authentic, and I find that different platforms kind of have this different energy around the topic of cancer. And sometimes, like, being on Instagram is too much for me, because, you know, there are influencers that I like to say have this toxic positivity, and sometimes you don't want to hear that. Like, you're going through something that is life changing, that is devastating, that could potentially be fatal for some people. And it's like, today I'm not positive. Yeah, I'm glad I can get treatment. Like, I'm glad about that. But like, I hate that this is happening to me. Why did this have to happen to me? And so, like, I found myself hanging out on Reddit a lot, actually, and they have different, you know, groups and subreddits on there. And there's a big breast cancer community on Reddit. And I oftentimes, you know, go and read people's stories. And it's a place where I've like found myself being able to vent about what's going on with me, because it's just a community of people who are going through the exact same thing. And like, sometimes I just, you know, it's all posts about like, I hate this and I hate life right now. And why did this happen to me? And like, none of us deserve this. And I like hanging out in that space sometimes, because it's not people telling me, you know, you're so strong, like you're gonna get through this, and you know, drink this tea and eat this fruit. And sometimes I'm just like, shut up. I don't want to hear all of that. I just want to be somewhere where people can relate to how I'm feeling. And honestly, sometimes I don't want to be encouraged. I just want people to like understand, like, this is really difficult mentally and physically. And I think sometimes I pick my different platform for whatever my need is in that moment. And you know, sometimes I don't want that authentic like positivity, whatever. Sometimes I just want to be negative, negative,
I,
and say how I feel.
yeah, sometimes I think that like talk like that yeah, we call it toxic positivity too over here in my family. But I think the like toxic positivity is not really like, to me it's not really authentic, because it's like, okay, your great grandmother had cancer in the 1800s, like that you can't relate to me in this day and age of having a whole different, I don't know, I know that sounds really aggressive and mean, but like I think people try so hard to be relatable for comfort, but it doesn't come off that way because of like we're not, at least for me, I don't take it that way. Like it sounds like it's being it's like toxic positivity, like, oh, my cousin's girlfriend's baby's like, not baby, but like my cousin's brother's like baby sister had cancer, and she did XYZ and took dandelion root tea, and she survived. And it's like, okay, thank you so much for that. And I don't know, I just, yeah, I think also Discord and Reddit, yes, but Discord too. Like I found a group called Lymphomies, and I thought that was funny. But it was just everyone from 18, I think it was 18 to 25 or 26, that was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma specifically, because people also kind of confuse non-Hodgkin's with Hodgkin's. And I got also from that, I got a lot of people tell me if I was exposed to Roundup growing up. And I was like, that's non-Hodgkin's, guys, but thank you. No, I was not. So.
Yeah, I guess when you put yourself out there, then you get a lot of feedback that you may not want to, that's the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's also, I really appreciate Dr. Miller posting about the practical strategies of kind of like setting boundaries and curating your feed, because I definitely learned that the hard way. I just opened the floodgates, and I allowed people from all over, the internet's universal or international or whatever. And so I opened the floodgates to a lot of people commenting and questions, and then like especially people at work too would make comments. And I definitely had to kind of set those boundaries for myself, where it's like, I'm not going to answer this. And then I would make a whole post about, hey guys, I've been getting a lot of questions about the like XYZ, and I have Hodgkin's lymphoma. I wasn't exposed to Roundup. I'm doing chemo. Please don't change my mind about that. I'm not doing any holistic remedies, because like me personally, I don't see a lot of scientific, like peer-reviewed scientific research about that. And it kind of like, I had to make posts about that because I didn't want to be mean. I wanted to protect myself and not get in an argument, because I don't have the energy. Like physically, I just don't have the energy. But I feel like I did that to myself because I opened those floodgates.
I see, that's interesting.
But I can also make establish those boundaries. So.
Okay, I know it's getting late, guys. It's about what, close to 1:15? Is that, I'm not sure how people feel, but is there any other, I guess we could do a last question, maybe, is that okay? Okay, what advice would you give to another young person with cancer who's thinking about starting to share their story on social media? I think that's a good way to end. Wait, hold on, Kim, what did you say?
I just wanted to thank them all. I mean, I said I wasn't an expert because the panel are all experts in this experience in a totally different way. And it's really helpful. I'd love to hear their advice, because I think they can give advice from that position of living, expecting to live publicly after a cancer diagnosis.
I agree. I'm just so inspired by this discussion that I think it's something that could be a first step in something. Yeah, it's really quite exciting. But is there any, yeah, go ahead, just the last question.
I was going to say my advice would be, one, obviously what you share is a very personal decision, so nobody should feel like they need to share everything or if anything at all. Also, I think Reagan touched on boundaries and kind of curating your feed. That's something that I really focused on because when I was initially sharing in my feed, I started seeing more things about cancer, and then I started seeing a lot of things about death. And one thing that I did was I specifically like blocked keywords on like my Instagram account. And so I blocked like the word death or funeral or like stage 4 dying cancer, like anything like that, because I just was like, this is not productive to me right now and it's making me feel worse. So I think, you can be very strategic about curating your feed and what you want to see, and also, blocking certain comments from people. So I would say to just, be conscious of your boundaries with people, both people people you don't know. Decide what you want to share or not share, and you have the ability to curate what you consume to a point. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Makia. How about Robert or Kenny? Do you want to, your last kind of comment on what your advice would be to people?
Sure. This is actually something that really touches me very deeply because I go through it every day. The fear of being judged and really the fear of self-worth, and especially during cancer, it was really tough to figure out how to express myself. And I think the best advice I would give to like a younger me would be, it's like it's not cancer being judged or posting on something and somebody doesn't like it. I think you got to live fearlessly. You got to live fearlessly and just know that deep down it really isn't a life or death thing to be able to express yourself. And the rewards for being able to express yourself, especially for men, I think that was the point, was sometimes you just really can't speak because there's just no way of doing it, or you just don't know how, and maybe social media is able to help you, and it certainly helped me. And when there's times where you're hesitant to click the share button, and just know that it's not a life or death thing and it's not a cancer thing that you're talking about, and go out there and really be fearless, and you'll reap the benefits for that. And I think it's probably easier said than done. So go out there and just practice. But I think that's what I would tell a younger self, is just not to care so much about others, even though of course it's naturally humanly impossible to not to care. But like really in the end of the day, like just go out there and be your best and be brave. And that's what
Thank
I would like to say.
you. And Robert, would you like to say a word or two?
Yeah, if you guys are like, if you guys want to kind of separate it from your personal life, you could always create a second account, which is what I did. Um, Although I did share every post I made on the second account with my account as well. And then also it's like you only live once. Just do what you're comfortable with, and if you think this is going to help you, or if you think social media is going to help you in ways that you might not be possibly able to get help otherwise, just try it out. It never hurts to try it out and then see where it takes you. um I think in this day and age, like, you really have to be something to like talk crap about people with cancer anyway. So like I usually see more pluses than not, and yeah, just do what you're comfortable with. Go explore, and just stick with it.
I was gonna say there's a chat, and I don't know if I think Mukaye kind of touched on that about like the overexposure of information shared in like online communities become detriment. I think she gave really good advice about like blocking keywords and kind of curating your feed, because I think you can really quickly get overstimulated because of our algorithm. If you look at like your explore page, it's typically like whatever you search for, it curates your feed to that. Like you're on Instagram specifically, or like even on TikTok, like if you will search for one video, your entire For You page is that. And so I think that's a good way to, I think she gave some good advice about that, is just kind of block those keywords in certain comments and limited comment access, and because the overexposure can get overstimulated.
Well, thank you, everyone. That is really such wonderful conversation. And I thank you all for being vulnerable and for sharing and for giving your experience. And I think this is just a beginning. Maybe we talk to Kim about something in the future. So it's great. But, and thank you, Kathy. Do you want to say a few words about, I know we want to end, just to thank everyone again.
Yeah, I will echo what you said, Aura, just to thank, you know, Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your presentation and your passion for this topic, and that you're invested and interested in helping the young adult population. That's very, very touching and meaningful. And to our panelists, Regan and Kenny and Robert and Mukaye, your transparency today and how authentic you were with each other. And I felt like we were witnessing the building of a little community here. And thank you for helping all of us. And I want to thank Shu from USC as well. It's wonderful to have your support, and Abby from CSELA, you're here in the background too. Thanks for all your support. I know we had a slide from Cancer Support Community and one from USC that we were going to share as we closed out. So Abby, do you want to put that up? Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. If you want to learn more about Cancer Support Community and our programs, you can visit our website, cancersupportla.org. And if you have any questions for us, you can always email our info account, info@cancersupportla.org. And we have a really fun game night that we do once a quarter. We just laugh a lot, and it's a really fun space. And so feel free I guess it's not quarterly, it's bi-monthly. I'm looking at my own flyer going, oh, it happens more often than I realize. But our next one is August 26th. So coming up soon, the week after next. So you can scan that QR code and join us. And then, Abby, do we have a slide for USC? Great. I will let Aura or Shu, I don't know which one of you wants to talk about your program.
I don't know how Shu feels, but I could just say it just real quickly because I know time is of essence, that you could reach us. We have a website at aya.usc.edu, and certainly we have events throughout the year. And if you want to be part of a newsletter and you're not getting the newsletter, then please contact, it's probably best to contact Shu. You can see Shu Lee at usc.edu. She will put you on the mailing list and you'll receive our newsletter that lets you know the kinds of activities that are coming up. But thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And we hope to see you at the next one, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.